Hi guys, we are on day 3 of the quadratic formula. In today's problems, we are going to get our third type of answer, which is a crazy answer. So what's going to happen on these problems is the number underneath the square root is not going to be a perfect square. So we will not get a nice whole number or a fraction. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to write your answers. Delta Math does ask for both. It asks for an exact answer and then for a rounded answer. So I'll show you both of those. But let's go ahead and get started. And remember, on these problems, they all start the same way. It's really on that very last step when you're trying to decide what your final answer is, where it starts to get a little bit different and a little bit weird. So I'm going to start this problem the same way I have for the past 2 days. First, I need to make sure that this is in standard form. So it's in descending order and it's equal to 0, which it is. Next, I'm going to identify my A, my B, and my C. My A is 3, my B is -8, and my C is -2. Now I'm going to plug this into the quadratic formula, which I've memorized. For the quadratic formula, it's -b. Now, remember, we talked about this last week. In this problem, b is already negative, so you will need to do a double negative, which will turn into a positive. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. Now, again, when your b is negative, make sure to surround it with parentheses and have the square on the outside. Minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is -2. And then big fraction bar across the whole entire problem. And then 2 times a on the bottom. And a again was 3. In this problem, I'm going to do 4 simplifyings for my next step. So first, the double negative out here, I'm going to change that to a +8. Next, -8 squared is +64. Then 4 times 3 times 2, and this minus sign and this negative sign will change into a plus sign in the middle. Remember, on your next step, you should have 2 numbers under your radical, and they should be subtracting, or if your C was negative, then they could also be adding. And then the fourth thing is the 2 times 3 on the bottom. So again, I changed this to a +8. -8 squared is +64. Be careful with that. 4 times 3 times 2 is 24. And this minus sign and this negative sign change to a plus. And then 2 times 3 is 6. Next, I'm just going to do one step of math. I'm not allowed to do any simplifying with a fraction. I have to keep going with my radical. So 64 plus 24 is 88. Now, here's where we start realizing, is it going to give us 2 nice answers? Is it going to give us 1 double root? That was our video on Friday. Or in this scenario, it's not going to give us nice answers. It's going to give us crazy answers, super long decimals. The place where you can tell what type of answer it's going to give you is right here underneath the square root sign. We'll actually talk about this a little bit more on Wednesday. So the square root of 88, I do not know the square root of 88 because 88 is not a perfect square. If I type it in my calculator, I'm going to get a decimal that takes up my entire calculator screen. So the way to tell if something's a perfect square or not, if you're not sure, is square root it on your calculator. And if it gives you a nice whole number, then you're good. But if it gives you a decimal, then it's not a perfect square. So in our previous problems, we would split it up into 2 separate questions, one with the adding sign and one with the subtracting sign. We are going to do that again on this problem. So I'm going to do one where it's 8 plus the square root of 88 over 6, and then I'll do another one where it's 8 minus the square root of 88 over 6. Now, I want you to get into the habit of having these 2 answers because there is one section of Delta Math where you have to get these answers. So make sure that you are capable of writing these answers. And then to get your decimal answers, which is what I'm going to want to see on your homework after you've split it up, to get your decimal answers, we're going to use our calculator. Now, as I've said on the PowerPoint, you're going to type in the top of the fraction first, and you're actually going to hit the equal sign, and you're going to get an answer for the top of the fraction. Once you get an answer for the top of the fraction, then you're going to do your dividing. So you don't want to type this all in at the same time, otherwise you will get the wrong answer. So I'm going to show you on my calculator, and then you guys try it on your calculator as well. Part of being successful this chapter is knowing how to correctly use your calculator. So I'm going to do 8 plus, and then I have to hit second x squared to get my square root symbol. 8 plus square root of 88. Okay, so I have this on my calculator right now, and then I'm going to hit the equals button, and I'm going to get an answer for just the top part. Now that is just the top, it's not the entire final answer yet. So I right now have 17.38083152, and it does keep going, but my calculator does not. So I'm going to keep that on my screen on my calculator, and now I'm going to hit divided by 6, and I'm going to hit equals again. And then this is my final answer, and it's just the first answer. So my first answer is 2.896805253. We are going to round on our paper homework to 2 numbers after the decimal. For Delta Math, there will be some problems where they ask for a decimal answer, and you just need to read the directions to see where to round to. If it says round to the tenths, it wants 1 number. If it says round to the hundredths, it wants 2. Thousandths would be 3, and so on. All right, so that's my first answer, and I would write that down. And then I do need a second answer. So for our second answer, this one was the answer, the 2.90. So if you look at the third number, it's a 6. The third number after the decimal is a 6, which will round that 89 up to a 90. Okay, so now I'm going to do the red fractions. So 8 minus the square root of 88, and then I hit equals, and I got negative 1.380835152. And now I'm going to divide by 6 and hit equals again, and I get this decimal, negative 0.23013, blah, 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 blah. We were rounding again to the nearest hundredths, 2 numbers after the decimal, so I'm just going to put the 0.23. The third number after the decimal is a 0, which means I do not round. I just keep it exactly how it was. All right, so this is what you do when there is a radical, a square root of a number that's not a perfect square. Now, if the Delta Math asks you to round, you can put a decimal answer, and on your homework you can round for a decimal answer. But if Delta Math wants an exact answer, then again, it wants these numbers. So there is one section of Delta Math that wants it like this, written with the radical, and then there is another section that wants it written like this with the decimals. So just read your directions carefully. Let's try one more of these because I know they can get a little tricky. Okay. Here again, I have a problem written in standard form. So I can identify my A, B, and C right now. My A is 3. My B is the invisible 1 in front of the X, so B is 1, and then C is negative 1. Plugging in, I get negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 1, all over 2 times 3. On this one, my B was not originally negative, so it is going to stay negative right here for the rest of the problem. Inside my square root sign, I'm going to do 1 squared, which is 1. 4 times 3 times 1 is 12. And just like in the last problem, I have a double negative. I have a minus sign and a negative 1. So this will change to a plus sign on my next step. And then 2 times 3 is 6. Now you cannot do any simplifying with your fraction. So for right now, we're just focusing on the inside of the square root sign. We're trying to get that down to a single number. So 1 plus 12 is 13. And at this point in time, I'm going to decide that this is going to give me, it's called an irrational solution, which is the square root of 13 is an irrational number because we do not know the square root of 13. You should split it right now into your 2 separate answers. We have our blue fraction, which is with the plus sign, and then we have our red fraction, which is with the minus sign. Sometimes on Delta Math, you will type these in. If it says it wants the exact answer, then you want these answers. Otherwise, you're going to use your calculator. Why don't you guys practice with your calculator and see if you can get the right decimal answers. All right, did you remember to type in the top, hit the equal sign before you divide by 6? So here's what I got. -1 plus the square root of 13 equals, and here I got 2.605551275, and then divided by 6 equals. So for my first answer, I got 0.43. The third number is a 4, and so I'm not going to round. So you only round if the third number after the decimal is 5 or higher. 0.43 would be acceptable. For my second answer, I start over at the top. -1 minus the square root of 13. And I got -4.605551275. Same decimal, that's fun. Divided by 6. Okay. Now this time I am going to round because the third number is a 7. So -0.767. Since the third number is a 7, I'm going to round the 0.76 to a 0.77. So here are my 2 decimal answers. Make sure that you're writing both of these on your paper homework. And then when you're doing your Delta math, pay attention to what the directions want. Do they want the exact answer or do they want the decimal answer? This concludes today's video.